it is, I'm not even sure what time it is. It's 5:38 and we are calling the Simsbury Community for Care meeting of May 12th, 2021 to order. Welcome everyone. Dana, are there any public audience comments that we need to read?
We received no public audience comments.
Thank you very much. So it's nice to see all of you here. As you know, we've been getting ourselves back in gear, trying to get back into our regular program schedule. And tonight we are going to do another program virtually. And that program will be self-care after COVID. We have some wonderful speakers coming up and everybody has been chipping in, and I very much appreciate all the help I got from Becky and Tom and Amy and everybody who was sending me stuff because I couldn't do anything. And so we're just going to wing it together, but I think it's going to be very informative. And we are on SCTV tonight. So that program will be available to everyone, and it will be available as a video on SCTV that we can share with other people. We won't have to rely on other, I know. So we're doing our best. So tonight we have a few things to do because we do not meet again until September. Is that it? September 8th. So what I'd like to do first is just make sure did everybody get the minutes from the March meeting? Okay, are there any corrections, additions, deletions, changes? Okay, is there a motion to accept the minutes from March 10th?
So moved.
Thank you, Becky. Is there a second? Karen is seconding. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Dana, you can help me with this one. Did the proposed policies and procedures go out on the email?
I don't currently have that information. What do you mean by the proposed policies and procedures?
The ones that Kristen was working on for the Board of Selectmen?
I don't have that information on that right now. I can get back to you about that.
I just wasn't sure if that had gone out because, like I said, I kind of lost track of my emails last week. But so just to get you up to speed, we are working on a set of official policies and procedures that the Board of Selectmen will have to approve for their community for care. In those policies and procedures, our membership requirements will be outlined, and meeting times, the number of members, how long a member's term is, and if a member does not present at a certain number of meetings in a year, the committee can decide to ask that member to resign, or maybe not. It may be for some other circumstances, but it just sort of puts into writing all of the things that we need to run more efficiently. So what I discussed with Kristen when she first proposed this was that we keep our committee to 10 members. So I'm throw it out to all of you to see how you feel about that. That is not a hard and fast number. I made that up. So we like to keep it to a manageable number because, groups that are too big are less efficient. So, and I think this group has been very efficient over time, but I would throw it out to all of you to see what you think about that number.
Where are we right now?
We were slightly above that, but we do have some members who have recently resigned. Chris Kelly and her name is just escaping me. You know her, Becky.
Oh, Hannah?
Hannah.
Okay.
Yes. We have not seen Mark Lehman for a while. He has not indicated whether he wishes to stay on the committee at this time or not. But I haven't asked him to make that decision. So we have just been reaching out to people who we have not seen in quite some time. You'll probably see them on your email list.
So is Dana going to be a new member, or is she helping with something?
Dana works for the Department of Social Services. She is Kristen's assistant at Community and Social Services. So she is staff.
So I'm just counting right now. Like, are
Yes.
we 11 tonight? That's what I'm.
Kathy Marshall is staff. And I think, Katie, do you count as a liaison? You count as a liaison from the Board of Education, I believe.
I believe so, but that's one of those things I don't know. So I was gonna kind of assume that.
Yes, that's my assumption. I don't know. Do you know differently?
I'm speaking very briefly here as myself. Just as a staffer, I'm just kind of hosting the meeting. I'm trying to be as unobtrusive as possible and let you do your business.
That's okay.
So I'll be in the background.
Yep.
No, thank you. I just wanted to know where we are right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cheryl, a quick question
Yes.
for the group. I can understand the 10, so what would be quorum? Would quorum be 5?
Yes, a quorum, well, would be 6 actually.
6, so
Yeah.
more than 50%. Okay. Just I would hate to do a smaller number. I mean, it's all about numbers here.
Yes.
If it's 10 or 12 and 5 or 6 for quorum.
Well, then you're less
You're getting
likely
my
to have a quorum. So that's the problem.
Yeah. Okay.
And eventually we probably will be back in person. So we will have to consider that when we're doing this.
Cheryl, I had a question.
Sure.
When I look at everybody who's here, it seems like, with the exception of me, who is like a rogue member of the public or something, everybody has some expertise that they've brought to this, or some school or medical posture. So do you want to leave a spot for a civilian, or do you want, are you going to reserve a spot for that? We used to have a number of members of the public who came
Yes.
at the beginning, and people spoke about problems that they were having. I remember we used to have a fairly frequent person in the public audience who would talk about the sorts of issues that we had been founded to deal with. And part of the reason I wanted to do it when I proposed that to Mary Glassman, which tells you how long ago it was that I had just finished working with the Canton League of Women Voters on their mental health study of the Farmington Valley towns and the services they provided. And so I was interested in it, and I thought there might be some synergy there, although it hasn't turned out that way. I mean, they did a number of programs that we didn't go to, and we did a number of programs that no one from they came. It's too far.
It does turn out that way.
People will not drive there. I used to go to the Canton League and say, you really can drive between Simsbury and Canton. See, I'm here tonight. But so I don't to think about that.
Well, personally, I'm hoping that everybody who's here will stay. That's my hope. I think the question is how we limit ourselves. We can also decide, as Sally quite rightly points out, to assign slots to certain people with certain amounts of expertise. That it sounds good in theory, but sometimes that doesn't always work out when you're holding a slot for a certain person, like say a clergyman. So now we have we have Gene Ott. He's not here tonight. And he's been terrific, but we didn't hold a particular slot for a clergy person, although we did seek it out. But we could, depending how you feel about that. Karen, did you want to say something, or? Yep, you're muted.
I was going to say, I think 10 to 12 is reasonable. I know 10 might be a little tight. I mean, we're just about there now. And I just think if there's interest, you hate to turn people away.
Yep.
And there may be somebody who's can bring something to the group that's currently not there.
So we are, and Perfectly. Yeah, I understand that. We are one of those special committees that does not get appointed by political parties. So we are appointed by the Board of Selectmen. So we have to go through them for our appointments. And in the rules that Kristen has proposed, those appointments will come through the Department of Social Services with input from all of us. So there will be a process for that. I know sometimes that's intimidating for people who don't, feel like they want to go through all that, but we do hold that sort of special status because of our role as, Dana could probably tell me what it's called. We're the committee that does it's for the grant funding for social services, and the actual wording of that has escaped me. But so we do have a status different from other boards and commissions that get appointed by the 2 town committees for the political parties.
I think 12 is a good number.
Okay.
Personally, I would worry too that when you get to 10 and then 10 becomes 7 or 6 and it gets kind of dicey. I think when in-person meetings become a reality again, it gives the opportunity to kind of put forth new expectations, sort of compassionately firm, expectations around attendance and those kinds of things, barring, special circumstances. And then it's going to start to sort of take care of itself without being too lean, because you can always become leaner, and groups typically do become leaner. It usually doesn't go the other way, right?
Exactly.
So that's kind of my thought, is that, the in-person is going to really sort of, it almost seems like it's more of an attendance and commitment issue. That the
there
group
is some of that.
Wants to resolve, and with no disrespect to anybody who's been, I'm
absolutely not.
Right. But things in life and patterns and things change.
Absolutely.
But maybe once we're in person again, and there may also be that flexibility around that we didn't used to have. People kind of want to be together, I think, but that somebody could Zoom in to the meeting and attend. This is not a reality of a flexibility that we kind of thought of as much.
Exactly.
Right. And that
we're going to miss some of this convenience.
Yeah. So just my thoughts. I sort of like 12. It's more for me about, what is the group's expectation of commitment, both in attendance and other ways of participating.
Yep.
I'm gonna jump in though and say that I've been at meetings where we don't have a quorum, and if we go with 12, we're gonna need 7.
Right.
Quorum, and we've had meetings with 3 or 4 of us, and I think that's happened more than once, right, Cheryl?
It has.
Yeah.
Well, that's why it's sort of that new, like, hey, new bylaws, new expectations, new, and so that's
okay. So
where you start from.
Well, one other thing, Cheryl, that I just wanted to bring up, and are you on the Spirit Council?
Yes, I am.
How much overlap are we going to have? Because I'm serving on Equity Council, which is really focused only on Simsbury Public Schools.
Yes, it is.
But I feel like the some of the things I've seen that Spirit Council has been doing is there's a little overlap, and I just wanted to throw that out.
There is. And as I said, I think we had a really successful program, which was the last one before shutdown, the implicit bias program.
Yeah. And
that was our joint program with the Spirit Council. And I think that, once we're able to bring those groups together again, we should definitely discuss that and ways that we might come back together again. I know the Spirit Council would be very interested in doing that also. So yes, that's a great point.
There, if I may jump in, there is some best practices along this line as far as representation of communities. And Cheryl, I'll be glad to send you a document with it. But basically, it's part of the prevention strategic framework called SPIF. And it's basically looks at 12 different community sectors when you build a group like this. doesn't mean you have to be all 12, but a representation of those 12 sectors. And when you apply for grants and for government monies, you have to actually have to be able to demonstrate that you do have all of those links within a majority of those community sectors. So I'll send that along to you, Cheryl.
Thanks, that's a great point, Tom.
Yeah, that's not going to stop the process, and I think some of the comments today, 10 or 12, in meeting quorum certainly can be a challenge, but just to have some best practices in place and say, well, why did you choose this? Well, this is the best practice.
Okay. Yeah. So, am I hearing that 12 is a number everybody's comfortable with? Sarah, do you want to comment on that, or?
No, I just like what Tom had to say. I think, the past experiences when we've been on this committee, we've been throwing out ideas, and I'd like to work closer with the police department to find out what are the trends of mental health that's been going on in the community, and how can we assist it. I'd like to see some more evidence-based practice in the group, so we can reach out and try and not only put on programs for the community, but look at ways that we can successfully decrease mental illness and help with different programs. So I think applying for grants and fitting in that framework that Tom was talking about would be really great to implement. Yeah,
that's a great point. And I think, I know Kristen wishes she could be here tonight. She had an emergency at home, but she will have some great suggestions on how we do that, perhaps with more grant availability, perhaps working with Spirit Council. Spirit Council is about to embark on a data collection within the community based on the resolution by the Board of Selectmen. So the Spirit Council is working on social justice, food security, education, housing, and what did I just do? So we have subcommittees right now. We just added a fourth. So our first three are outreach, data, and events. So they're holding an event every month through the library Zoom right now. But, until we get back in person. And we just added a housing subcommittee in order to stay in line with the goals of the resolution. So we're working on that. It's just getting started. So I think there's a lot of issues there, particularly in health equities that are going to pop up, that are going to be contiguous with what we're doing. So I think we should keep that in mind, when, to Becky's point about working more with Spirit Council. And Becky, you'll be pleased to know that the Spirit Council is presenting to the Board of Education on the 25th when they're at Terrafil. So we are going to be there to talk about that. So I think that bringing all these community organizations together to work towards these common goals is important. Why reinvent the wheel? But everybody here has great ideas and great ways to contribute. And we do have a different lane than Spirit Council right now, but we will certainly come together at some points.
Right. And I think we do have to be careful that we don't try to get, that I totally, as somebody who sort of has to try in education to work within evidence-based practices, which is how it should be, I only hesitated and got a little bit scared because I knew exactly what she was saying, except that we only meet a certain number of times. Like we really, my understanding of our mission and goal as it stands is more about fostering awareness and connections and resources, as opposed to actually making evidence-based change through evidence-based processes, which is a whole that's
a whole different thing.
All different things. Yep. So I was kind of myself, and
I think
clarification on that.
Yep. I think that our points of coming together are going to be more with the events subcommittee. So how we do that type of programming. So you know, we've done programs through Spirit, you know, we did World AIDS Day and human trafficking, and, you know, we did disability rights for people. And, you know, so there was lots of things that happen that we might be able to help out with.
Yeah, because for me as a newbie, the appeal for me is the breadth of the different kinds of things that we're sort of trying to just do a toe dip of awareness in. Not that we don't want anything deeper or for it to result, but that was sort of my understanding of, you know, kind of our work.
Absolutely. So, okay.
Cheryl?
Yeah, Sally.
Tom's document. Could you share that with the rest of the committee?
Yes, I will.
Thank you very much.
As long as it's okay with Tom, it's okay with me.
Cheryl?
Yes.
I just want to pipe in that 2 of our presenters are going to be hopping on the Zoom meeting at about 6:15.
Yes, I told Dana that.
Because I think they would like to, now is Dana going to do Kristen's piece or no? Is there just no Kristen's piece?
There is Kristen's piece, but, and I think she sent it to me, but we need somebody else to read Kristen's piece. That's the.
So I just wanted to say that when 2 new faces pop up, Cynthia Adams and Kathy Ernst are going to pop in, and I can tell you that both of them have probably over prepared for this and felt a little bit like they weren't quite sure, you know, what was expected of them. And I spoke to both of them yesterday, and I just want to make sure we're very welcoming and warm to them, because they really did quite a bit. And I know Sally also did quite a bit of preparation.
She did. Yeah, and I am really just going to step back and then let them do their thing.
Well, they have never talked to each other. That's
right. No, I saw your message. So I told Dana that they were going to come in at 6:15. So I thought that would be great for this group to welcome them and talk about what we're going to do. So I don't know that we got any questions from people that we're going to answer. So, or if anybody else is going to join as the public. But
if I see any names in the waiting room, this is Dana. I will admit them. Hello. Okay.
But I think, well, let's finish like what we were doing, and then
Sorry, Cheryl.
All right. So I know I'm just like going off track here. So I'm gonna write down that 12 was a number that we've sort of coalesced around. We'll have to talk to Kristen about that, and then we will distribute the draft to everybody, so you all have a chance to look at the whole thing together. And at some point, if everybody approves, you know, after we've made some changes or whatever, it will have to go to the Board of Selectmen for them to approve. Okay. So quickly, before we go on to talking about what we're going to do for our program tonight, for September, Tom, I think you had a plan for September, if I recall.
Well, September is Suicide Prevention Month.
Yes.
So there's a couple things we could consider that are no cost. We've done suicide prevention training in the past. I think we did QPR, question, persuade, and refer. We can certainly do that again. There's another program out there called Talk Saves Lives, and I think we did that one too.
We did Talk Save Lives once. That was a great program.
Right, and there's some new versions of it, especially as it relates to different populations and communities, LGBTQ community. There's workforce. There's several new platforms, you know, with this virtual thing that develop stuff. But you know, there's a new program out called the Gizmo Initiative, and I'm not sure if Katie knows of our new person from the school system, but I can share that with you. It's a mental health promotion program for grammar school kids. And it's designed, and you can go to preventsuicidect.org website, and there's a link to the whole program. But what we're doing now, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention is working with the state of Connecticut and the Connecticut Suicide Advisory Board, which I'm a co-chair of, to go nationwide on this program. And it's designed now for the virtual setting. It's interesting. It's really focused on 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. But the essence of it, it's not a suicide prevention program. We don't teach young children like that, suicide prevention. Mm-hmm. But what we teach them is mental health promotion. And so it's about feelings and sad, happy, angry, those kind of things, and what we do with those, and with a special focus on trusted adults. So I think that that might be and I'll be happy to send that stuff to you, Sharon. You can send it to the rest of the folks that we could put.
Do you think that's geared more towards educators, or is that something that parents and caregivers would be interested in?
It's both.
Oh,
that's the unique part of it. Yes, it's designed in a school setting, for a school setting, but it goes way beyond that. So, I mean, again, I think we have time to discuss it, but just, something new that I think it could bring a different attention to might be a pretty positive thing.
Okay.
We haven't done anything on grief support either when it comes to suicide prevention.
That's true.
Which we maybe, this is folks with who have been impacted by suicide, or those with lived experience, and maybe having a couple of, if we're in the format that we are in now, that in virtual then, and hopefully not, let's hope, that you could have some panelists to talk about, and we can easily pull some local folk who are willing to speak on behalf that can really help to educate the community on, how do you heal from such a tragic loss, and what are the personal experiences, and in the prevention field with suicide now, there's a real hard focus on folks with lived experience, because you'd be surprised how many folks are out there. And for those who don't know, people with lived experience are folks who have attempted suicide and have survived their attempt. And when we're beginning to learn a lot more from the folks as they come forward on really what to do in prevention. There's a lot new stuff on research. Now that can be kind of boring, but if you're a research person, that would catch your eye too. So, and maybe more of a mental health promotion kind of theme, and maybe we can pull in a couple of those pieces, and I'll be glad to help make that happen.
That would be great.
A lot of people connected in the field, and we can bring some real experts to the table. Mm-hmm. I don't like to use words experts, because I think experts are self-proclaimed. But anyway, but people who are in the know, and try to make it Simsbury focused. So Simsbury folk might be a really good place to go. So those
are you okay with taking the lead on this one?
I can never say no to you, Cheryl. Come on.
Oh, thank you.
It's like buying that hat I did in front of
I know, gosh.
Hey, Tom, I want to connect with you later offline. And you just, unfortunately for Cheryl, gave me a brief segue. So forgive me, this doesn't need to go in the minutes. But at Canton High School, I have a group of athletes, a team who's looking for, they just want to make a donation to some kind of organization that helps with suicide awareness and prevention. And they were coming up empty. And I said, I know someone local. You've come to our high school before. So I'd love to connect with you offline. This is just a girl, the softball team wants to make a donation of some funds that they raised for that cause. So can I connect with you later?
Yeah, the Connecticut chapter for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Great place.
There we go.
Okay. And you have I train your superintendent in QPR, question, persuade, and refer.
Yeah, you came to our high school. Okay, I'll talk to you. Thank you.
Connected there. Yeah, he's a superstar.
Okay, so we are settled? I think we had talked about this last time. I just want to confirm September will be a suicide related program.
I would use mental health promotion.
Mental health promotion. Okay.
And that way we can be wide in the subject.
Okay.
And Tom, I just want to offer, I'm not familiar with the Gizmo program, but if you are looking to do a piece of this around getting to parents and getting to those younger kids, let me know, and I can help with that programming around how to support and provide some pieces for our parents through. I'll look into that piece.
You know, the library could be folks from the library can be a real partner here, because it's called part of that whole program design is called a read along, and it's like a 45-minute read along. There's several now popping up now across the state because they're piloting a program. Connecticut's one of the states that this whole program's being piloted in, but it's been offered at 20 school systems.
Is this through Sandy Hook Promise?
It is not, but they have been involved with it.
Okay, because I've got some suicide prevention training coming up with them, but I didn't know if that was connected. So
right, yeah, I know some of the folks from over there as well too. Yeah, it's interconnected, but more informally.
Okay.
This was something that was developed out of the Connecticut Suicide Advisory Board, which is a statewide, hopefully someday put in statute on the Connecticut legislative level. That basically provides suicide prevention, postvention, and grief support for the state. It's a very robust group. So Katie, I'll connect you up. I'm going to connect you up. No worries.
Yep.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Chief Davis, do you know if the suicide statistics here in Simsbury have changed through COVID? Have there?
I don't believe they've changed, at least precipitously. We actually have been, I want to say, because we just did a analysis not too long ago that basically showed there was a slight increase, but nothing, but as far as suicide threats, not completed suicides or anything like that, but there was just a slight increase. Nothing too drastic though.
Okay. So you're saying
I can get the suicide rates from the Department of Public Health, just connected to Simsbury over the last 3 years. If you want to see that data is now available through the violent. I forget the name, the acronyms, blah, blah, but it's a whole reporting system that the state has been using for several years, and all 50 states now use it. So, but that information is readily available. The interesting part is suicide rates are down statewide.
Well, that's what I was wondering, because
they're down. Yeah, unfortunately, suicide rate is up for youth.
That was my next question.
Overall, it's down. Because it's lifespan problem, but we've noticed there's an uptick. We now track in Connecticut youth suicide up to age 25 for a number of reasons. We can certainly get into conversation about, and I serve on the response team. So when there is a death by suicide in that age group, I'm a part of a team that responds. And luckily, I haven't had to respond to Simsbury, but I have had to respond to several towns around us, and it, it can be quite dramatic. And it's all about best practices and support and helping communities that have had such a loss to get beyond it and to find some normalcy, but more importantly, to protect the community against contagion, because that's the copycat, that kind of thing. So that's where the concern is. And youth suicide is not a school problem; it's a community problem.
No, I know.
So, but I always have to say that.
Yeah. Okay. So that will be September. I would encourage all of you, in the meantime, while we're kind of out for the summer, to, keep thinking about things that we might do. I know you all have great ideas, and so that when we get back to September, and hopefully, as we're going to talk about tonight, the return to normal, it's that we all make it successfully back, that, you know, we'll have a lot of stuff in the hopper to move forward. So, okay, so that was all of our new business. Is there any old business anybody would like to discuss before we move on to tonight's event? Okay. I see Cynthia Adams is here. Hello.
Hello. Great to see everybody.
Nice to see you. Thank you for joining us. We are so pleased that you're here. And this is our group. You can see everybody on the screen. Everybody has a very, you know, we're very diverse backgrounds and expertise, as you've probably seen, but just listening in here. We're so happy that you decided to join us tonight, and we're very much looking forward to your presentation. And I have to apologize in advance for some of my inattention. I had surgery over a week ago, and I have just been sort of out of it. And but Becky has been helping me out, and I know you've been in touch with her.
Yep.
So I'm going to lean on her a little bit tonight to move us forward. Okay. So Dana, would you like us to adjourn the regular meeting so we can talk about the program?
Yes. Shall I stop the live stream temporarily until you tell me again? Just restart it.
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn our regular meeting? Anyone? Okay. Sally and Karen is seconding. Okay, we are adjourned from the regular meeting. So I'm so glad you could all join us here this evening for this discussion. We have some wonderful panelists here to talk about different aspects of how we re-engage. You know, we've all been very isolated, and it's time to go back to what everybody calls normal. And that's going to look different for everybody. So we have some people here to talk about what that looks like and how we can help each other do that successfully and move past what's been just a nightmare year for all of us. So I'd like to welcome our speakers here tonight. We have Cynthia Adams from the Farmington Valley Visiting Nurses Association, and we have Kathy Ernst, a school psychologist at Simsbury High School. And we are going to have one of our own Community for Care members, Sally Rieger, also helping us tonight with some wonderful information and resources about recreation and how that can help us re-enter. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Cynthia Adams, and she's going to start our discussion tonight.
Thank you, Cheryl. And I'm happy to be here and honored to join this group this evening. At the Farmington Valley VNA, we see a whole myriad of age groups and patients. And I think that what we've seen is not unique to being in the home. So I want to just kind of give an overview of what we'd like to discuss tonight. And then our individual speakers will speak to areas where they have interfaced with different populations. So anyhow, when we hit this 1 year mark of COVID recently, we all kind of stepped back and looked at, an assessment of how are we doing. And, first and foremost, a lot went well in the Farmington Valley and in Simsbury in particular. And the way we were able to keep schools open and the way that the Public Safety Committee worked with the community to address issues and reach out to people was truly amazing and very well done. I think the other side of that is that each one of us, and not unique to any of us, that we all had, some angst over what was happening in our world and in our communities. Frequently we would hear, I'm having trouble sleeping, I'm feeling anxious, I'm scared, and in visiting nurse land, people didn't even want the nurses to come into their homes when they needed care. And so we were dressed like, Martians going in our PPE, and we were very careful and respectful of people's needing to set boundaries in order to feel safe. So we've come a long way since those very beginning months But, you know, sometimes as we start this process of reentry and our governor says we're all going to open up on May 19th and let's go play ball, you know, some of us still feel a little hesitant about, you know, reentry and what that's going to feel like and look like for each one of us individually. And we want to talk about that a little bit tonight. And first, we want to just address the self-care aspect of that, respecting what you feel. And don't, you know, just because somebody else is at the ballpark tonight watching the Red Sox doesn't mean we all have to jump in feet for, you know, both feet. So I think, you know, kind of doing an inventory. What am I comfortable with? And, you know, and slowly trying a few new things, not everything at once, is kind of the way that we're guiding people. You know, are you ready to go inside a restaurant? Are you ready to, you know, walk down an aisle in a grocery store if you haven't done that yet? And those kinds of things. Go to a music festival or the kinds of things that will happen this summer. And then, you know, setting some goals around that. And part of that is really knowing that a lot of us felt isolated in the last year and we need to re-enter. We all do. We need to see our friends and, you know, we might even hug them if we're all vaccinated or whatever we choose to do. But that we need to, you know, start the steps forward to come out of the COVID scare that we've been in for a long time now. So I just will quickly address self-care strategies, and they're things that every single one of you watching tonight knows, but they're important because a lot of things have been mixed up this past year. So a lot of people gained weight, and a lot of people, you know, ate differently. And so, you know, just good, solid nutrition, taking care of yourself in terms of sleeping and setting, you know, if you're starting back to school, if you were out of school, you were out of work, you may have let your sleeping patterns get a little bit different. So, you know, setting a real schedule to get yourself so you are sleeping well again, you are eating well again, and hopefully able to get outside some. It's beautiful this spring, everything's in bloom, and start the process of walking or running or doing whatever you like to do, and doing it in a way that feels safe to you. So even though some people are starting to, you know, take off their masks, you don't have to. You can take the steps that feel comfortable for you, and you can do it at the pace that you're ready to do it. But I would encourage all of us to start actively the process. And if you really go into an environment where you don't feel safe, trust that, and, you know, to the best of your ability, make a different plan or talk to somebody about what it feels like for you in that setting and how you would prefer to enter that site. So I do a lot of things, so I'll just mention them, but I do a lot of exercise, I do a lot of meditation, and you know, there's so much online. I like Deepak Chopra, but there's all kinds of meditation apps and just kind of ways to kind of take a 10-minute break in your day and relax and calm and focus on just, you know, feeling good and strong and capable of going out into the world and you know, re-entering all the different parts of our life, which we want to get back to. Another part that I've done a lot of reading in the last year is about building resilience in ourselves and our communities. And, you know, we've really adapted well in the last year, and we learned mitigation strategies, and we, you know, did follow the CDC recommendations, and And now it's time to set a few new goals in the next year about what have we missed the most and how might we start back toward that goal. And for some of us, and when we get into the discussion part, I'd love to hear what people are thinking in that regard. But some of us are anxious to get back to travel or visiting family or, you know, returning to a full schedule of school or work, you know, returning to the work site in full. So whatever those new goals will be, kind of, you know, I like to write goals down and then think of steps toward getting to them. Like it doesn't have to be, I'm just jumping off the diving board. It can be, you know, the typical thing. If it's returning to work, start back one day and then 3 days and then maybe not full days, or, you know, obviously in discussion with your colleagues and boss, but there can be steps to this process of reentry so that people do feel comfortable and relaxed and safe. So in terms of just kind of, there's a great book called, it's one of my favorites, but it's called Mindset, the New Psychology of Success. And it really began with schools, but I'm a runner and runners use this whole thing of mindset a lot now. Like, don't ever tell yourself, I can't do it, but say, I haven't done it yet. And think about steps that each one of us can take toward getting toward that goal. So in other words, if you've only run 5Ks your whole life, you don't say, I'm running a marathon next week. But don't rule out that someday you might run a marathon. And how, if that was your goal, how would you start the work now toward taking steps that will strengthen your athletic ability that you can reach for maybe the next step, a 10K or whatever that is. And you know, to whatever your passions and loves in life are, how can you get back to those? Like, I love music, and the great news about the COVID was there was a lot put online. And I used to watch Yo-Yo Ma did free concerts on Zoom for anybody who loves his work. And there's a lot out there, but, you know, maybe a goal is to attend a concert, you know, in the next 6 months, or get on a plane and fly. And in each case, it will take a little bit of homework, you know, and I will have some resources available. And they change. So we all know that, right? The CDC guidelines for travel in our nation and internationally have changed over the weeks and will continue to do that. But doing some homework to investigate how you might reach that goal safely, and then taking the steps and making a plan to put it in place in a reasonable amount of time, so that it does feel safe for you and for your family. And in terms of our communities, I live in Granby and I serve on the long-term recovery committee. You know, there has been an awful lot that has gone right. And I think we've learned to communicate a little bit better. We've learned certainly how the schools got all the online learning up and were able to be flexible with schedules was amazing and outstanding. And each business in their own way has made those adaptations and made it work. And it's incredible. And how can we build on that? How can we not lose all that we've learned by going through this major crisis? But adapt back to what it will be like with, you know, we're one of the leading states in the nation with 70% of our population now having at least one vaccine in the adults. What will it look like next fall in terms of, you know, further opening up and further comfort for each one of us? And how can our communities continue to grow so that the next time we have a disaster, we're a little better prepared? You know, and certainly in healthcare, a huge piece of that is making sure we have enough protective PPE. you know, so that, you know, because we were all short, we were all caught off guard, and it was pretty crazy there for a couple of months while we all scrambled. And you know, so all those things that we've learned over those particularly first 6 months as we scrambled to adapt fast, can we take that and build stronger so that the next time, whatever the crisis is, we'll be a little better prepared and a little better communication with each other and a little bit more flexible in how we adapt. So I think I'm going to stop there and let the other speakers kind of talk to the populations that they see and work with and what they've experienced as successes in the go forward and reentry process. Who'd like to go next?
So I can jump in. So again, I'm Kathy Ernst, and I'm one of the school psychologists at the high school level. So I do come with a particular lens. The high school is different than the elementary and probably middle schools. But in general, I feel, I actually, thank you, Cynthia, for going through quite a lot of that, because I think what it brought up a number of things for me that I have seen in the schools. And you actually mentioned one of them. I think our schools in particular have done an amazing job of flexibility, all on the part of the staff, but also on the part of the kids. And they've demonstrated a great ability to adapt. From everything I know, last summer, as I was preparing to come back into school, we were talking about, will kids wear masks, and how will they do with keeping their masks on, and how will they do with, you know, having different partitions between them and those kinds of things. And I think, you know, there's been some bumps in the road, but I do think in general, many of those things that we learned and strategies that we put into place, kids demonstrated that they were able to do it, and they were able to rise to the standards that teachers, you know, set. And teachers have done an amazing job of being flexible with teaching both online and in person, and shifting from day to day. And again, it's come with a little bit of stress, I think, for the part of the teachers. But in general, they have done a very nice job of stepping up to that. And from a school psychologist standpoint, I think there are a couple of things that, you know, we talk some about how our mental health is maybe going to be negatively impacted for many students. And I think there is going to be some of that where we'll be dealing with kids who have been maybe they have social anxiety and they haven't been in the school for a year. So we're going to have to talk about, and we are already talking about, how we'll be using some of the things that maybe have worked over the year to kind of help with that. But there are also some students who are actually being quite successful and have been quite successful with the online learning. And it really met some of their needs. And so taking from that and using, you know, well, what worked for them and what is working for them. And can we take a piece of that and help students? Because we have kids who have social anxiety. We had them pre-pandemic, we're going to have them post-pandemic. And maybe there are aspects of that learning that we can take and build into our schools and utilize those resources. So I think that that's been a piece that has really kind of stood out for me. The other, I was actually sitting in on some interviews at one point in time, and somebody said, you know, one of the silver linings really is how much the teachers have learned about Google Classroom and using Google Meets, connecting with students online, making it as real as possible via this. And so I don't see that going completely away. They may not be standing in front of a video camera as we fully transition back in next year, but I do believe that teachers have really helped with being able to organize on Google Classroom and some of those kinds of things for students. So I think there's a lot of positives that have come from this. With that said, I also agree with Cynthia. I think we do have some steps to take. I mean, in the schools, the elementary and middle school have actually been back, which is actually a huge success for Simsbury. I live in a different district and it was not as easy of a transition back, and we did not transition back as early. So I think Simsbury did a nice job with getting our elementary students back in, the middle school back in, and then obviously the high school is bigger, so it was took a longer time. But you know, we're in 4 days a week, which is great, and has given many of the students who were struggling with the online learning the opportunity to be in school as much as possible. But with that said, there are some students who haven't been in the building yet, now for almost 1.5 years or 1 year and a couple of months. And I think it's going to be a process, and I have some resources for parents if needed around kind of, you know, starting slow, having conversations about, yeah, anxiety is going to show up. It did for each one of us as we stepped back into our roles. I know it did for me the first day I walked in the building. What's going to happen? What's it going to look like? How is this going to happen? And so talking with the students over the summer about, yes, expect that that anxiety is going to show up. What is it going to look like, and what's it going to say to you? And how can you kind of maybe talk back to it a little bit? And I think starting slow, if your students or the children haven't been really left the house much at all, starting small, maybe having them go to the grocery store with you, having them set an outside play date first, meet up with their friends, do something small and fun where they're going to be interacting with other people, and start there. And don't, you know, leave that until just the day before school starts. But I know some of our schools will be open and have opportunities for kids to come in the building if they haven't walked in the building. So taking that step and going back in the building. So again, those small steps and setting a goal with your child or with your teen about, well, what is it that you want to do? Well, I want to make sure that it's going to be expected that you're back in school full time. Well, what will that look like? And what goals can I do to get there? And so like Cynthia said, you know, she kind of sets her own goals and they have small pieces that you can do. But I think kids will need help with some of that. So helping them to do that piece. So I'm going to stop and kind of let somebody else have a chance.
Mm-hmm. Great. I'm just going to ask Sally, if you want to jump in here, because Sally is our outdoors expert. She does a lot of work with the Land Trust and runs a lot of hiking groups and outdoor groups. And I think she has some ideas to share with us, maybe of what to do for adults and children to help ease that entry. So go ahead, Sally. You're on mute, Sally.
And I had carefully poised my cursor right on the mute button. Did I remember?
That's okay.
Sorry. Yeah, you give me more credit than I deserve, really, to say I've run many hiking groups. My husband and I run many hikes because we've done hikes for the Land Trust for a number of years. And we started something called the Hiking Club, which I now have an email list of over 100 people who are ostensibly part of that. But people like that sense of belonging to something, and that's a big piece of the value of recreation. Mm-hmm. Outdoors is something that tends to reduce stress anyway, being out in the natural world. And I just say, by way of starting off, that even if you aren't able to hike, or you know somebody who's not able to hike, there are still ways to be outside, even if it's sitting on your deck and having a cup of coffee outside when it's warm enough in the sun, it's very pleasant. Or if you can do a little more, going down to the new little park by the Flower Bridge, where there are benches and there is a shelter with a table in it, and you can meet a friend outside where it's relatively safe. You could wear masks if you're not ready to unmask, or you can take Anthony Fauci's advice of any two are safe, outdoors, masked, social distance, choose two and do two of them, and you're going to be pretty safe. So you can sit at opposite ends of the bench and be pretty comfortable, or sit far enough apart and have lunch together and chat. That's one place that I've seen all kinds of people who've gone down there and they're just sitting there watching the river go by and enjoying being outside. The other place that I don't think of very often, but I've lately seen usually two women sitting on a bench and chatting, is Schultz Park on Hot Meadow Street. And those of you who lived in Simsbury quite a while will remember that in the days before the Performing Arts Center, there was a bandshell and there used to be summer concerts there, but now there are benches, and that's a place, it's a public place. Anybody can go there. You can go and you can visit. With hiking, we stopped the hiking group during the pandemic. We couldn't figure a way to do it, even though outdoors is relatively safe, because the thing about the group is it's a bunch of people that chat. The social side of it is as important as the actual walking and exercise. But we've walked a lot of places, and I just have some thoughts as places you might go that aren't too busy, because I know people had trouble during the pandemic when they wanted to go hiking and to get outdoors and have a walk. And if you tried to go to Penwood or to Talcott Mountain on a weekend, you would see that the Connecticut, what they call the ENCON police, the environmental police that work for the DEEP, were there preventing excess people in the parking lot because they were trying to maintain social distancing. And I think they did a good job doing that, and it was for everybody's safety, but it was frustrating to people. But there are places that people don't go so much. So I sort of divided my list of nice places to go that you can go without too much effort, easy places, and then some medium places, and then some places that are good for longer and harder hikes. If a hike is in Simsbury, you will find it in the Simsbury Land Trust Walkbook, which is available online. And it lists hikes that are not Land Trust hikes. But easy hikes, Simsbury Farms Fitness Trail is easy. You can loop around the outside of the golf course. It's about 3 miles, a little under that. There are sections of the bike trail. Simsbury Center is often more crowded, particularly on a weekend. But if you head north a little bit and you park on the Floydville Road and walk north, and you walk up to Route 189, you have a chance to cross Salmon Brook on a bridge. And I've stood there over that bridge with a couple of kids and looked down and watched some species of fish migrating upstream. Just being there at the right moment is when you catch something really interesting happen. Route 189 up to, and then to Copper Hill Road, that's a little bit longer, but these are all flat, they're all paved. And that particularly sweet one goes through a wooded wetland, and it has some nice benches that East Granby Land Trust has provided. So you can stop and look and watch the birds and whatever. There are some other local ones, and I made a document, so maybe it can go on the Community for Care website at some point if people are interested. But most of this is in the walkbook. You know, Ethel Walker Woods and Holcomb Farm in Granby. Ethel Walker Woods is moderate. I call it moderate, even though some of it's easy, because there are 2 good hills. But Holcomb Farm in Granby on the east side, if you are looking for a place to go where you're almost certain to meet only 1 or 2 people, or maybe a family, try Holcomb Farm. I was so surprised. There's good parking at the farm buildings, and you just cross the street, and the trails are nicely marked and they maintain them well. And once you get up the hill, it's pretty level. You end up in a field, and there's a lovely view of the ridge line off to the west of the Farmington Valley. So that's really nice. That's a great place. And then I guess my favorite hike in Simsbury is the West Mountain Loop, which is about 5 miles long. It starts about 500 yards at a driveway that goes in to the west of the Master's School driveway. And it goes up on a ridge line, and then it drops off in steeply, you might want hiking poles, into a little valley. And that valley on a blue trail that takes you back is the neatest geologic site. It is really a failed rift valley. So if you don't get to go to Africa and see the Great Rift Valley there, you can go to West Simsbury and see a little rift valley that, unfortunately, it didn't happen, because if it had rifted there, that would have been the Atlantic Ocean. But the rock on the west side of that came from the crashing together of Proto-North America and Africa about 450 million years ago. And there was an ancient sea between the two, and that sea got squished together and pushed up to make an upland. So that rock is all metamorphic rock, and it's about 450 million years old. And you can stand there and practically straddle the two sides. The other side is a basalt kind of rock that oozed out about 250 million years later, when those two continents were coming apart. And you have what is like the basalt of Talcott Mountain, but that's the ridge on the other side. So one side you've got granite, you've got mica, and on the other side you've got an igneous rock that's, I think, called dolomite. But it's an amazing place to stand there. And down in that little valley in the summertime, it is cool. It is. And I don't mean it's a cool sight because it's cool to look at. It's cool because it's very shady down there. And there are big chunks of rock on the Talus slope on the east side. A talus slope, if you don't know, and I'm sure a lot of you do, is these big chunks of rock that fall off the side of a mountain and make a slope. But it's what's called an ice talus. So when it snows and rains and freezes, the water freezes down in among those rocks. And in July, there's still cold places in there, and the air moves down the slope, and it's there in the valley. So
that's amazing.
Isn't it amazing?
That is amazing. So now we've learned a lot of great places, as Cindy and Kathy were telling us, to go and have a little self-reflection. And get ourselves back in shape.
It puts you in your place when you stand there and look at the rocks that are 450 million years old, and you think, here I am for a very short time. I might as well have a good time.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you so much, Sally. That's wonderful information. So like Sally said, we're going to have some lists of resources available after this program. So that is certainly important information for us to all get out and have maybe some socially distant hiking, or take a friend and enjoy. So now we're going to go back to Cynthia, who's going to pick up the story on our re-entry.
Okay. You know, one population, and then I will talk more to re-entry. One population that I think is particularly at risk in all of our communities is the elderly and people who have disease processes that they haven't been able to get out. And the great news is, you know, Amazon does deliver, and there have been people reaching out and making food deliveries, and all kinds of resources have been mobilized by our communities and our churches and synagogues and all of the above. But I would just say to all of us that, you know, check in your neighborhood with how people are doing, and particularly if there are vulnerable elderly living alone. You know, they've had a rough year, and we all know that, you know, confusion can increase when you're not getting out, and depression can increase. So I think just being sensitive to even saying, you know, can I come over and bring a sandwich and sit outside in your backyard and just share it with you, or have a cup of tea together, or just something where you reach out two people, or just make sure that somebody is, and I know your social service department is very active and probably helpful with that. Is there anything, I mean, I did the scan in the fast lane, but for all of you on the committee and in the community tonight, are there any specific questions that you would like me to address more in depth?
I have one, Cynthia. How do you know how much to, I'm going to use the word push, and that's not the right word, but how much do you push someone who's really, who seems very, very hesitant to re-engage socially at all? Even with people who are vaccinated or even with masks and things. Like, how much do you say, come on, it's okay, versus just letting it? Do you know what I mean?
I do. I think it's an important question, Becky, and one that has to be individualized because people have such different coping mechanisms. But you know, if I was a nurse going into that home, I would say, let's set some goals together. And, you know, where would you like to begin? You know, can you go out on your back porch and have lunch with your niece who wants to visit? Or, you know, small steps that can be successful and then build on that. You know, if an offer, you know, offer to be the person who transports or goes the first time with the person to the grocery store and says ahead of time, we'll leave if you're really uncomfortable. So we're just going to try it. And we're going to choose to go down aisles that have nobody in them in the beginning. You know what I'm saying? So just being sensitive that there are people who are really afraid, and that's real, and that's hard to get over. And, you know, and don't in any way diminish the realness of those feelings, but say it's important for you to start getting out more. You'll feel better. You will feel better. And you'll, when you feel better and you feel more joy, it helps your immune system a lot. So you're actually decreasing your risk, you know, when you're out hiking. And I'm in McLean every day. And there's just, you know, there's a whole bunch of healthy people out there working off their stress, you know, and I'm right there with them. But if you can't do that, you know, your immune system can suffer. So trying to appeal to, it's a healthy part to begin. And, you know, a little push is good, but if you meet a lot of resistance, perhaps you can say, you know, I think it might be a good time to just talk with your healthcare provider about what are reasonable goals for you in the next 6 months. You know, and have somebody just take an objective look at it with that person in a very non-threatening way, but realistically, you know, if you know, what are your goals? Do you want to stay in your home? Do you want to stay active? And if so, how can we support you?
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I have a question that it sort of goes to both of you, but I think I'll start with Kathy. I have a college student, but there's been so much loss of experience. And, you know, even now, you know, they're not having a graduation that's a regular graduation. And we already have one class of students that missed an entire graduation. And there's proms, and there's, you know, there was games, and there was kids who never got that state championship and never had those experiences. And how do we as parents, I mean, you don't want to say, well, just forget it, move on, you know. I think it's hard to do that, but you don't want to dwell too much on that loss. But I feel like we have to acknowledge the loss. And how do you feel about that?
I agree. I mean, I think you probably want to take it with anyone, but with kids in general, you know, as they bring it up, but you probably want to give them opportunities. You know, I mean, like if you're chatting about something, maybe talk about a loss that you've experienced with COVID, right? And then give them the space to talk about their loss, and don't diminish it, right? And just let them have a chance. And maybe it's short. Maybe it's, you know, a 2-minute conversation. Maybe it's more, you know, I have a 7th grader and he missed every single 6th grade. You know, they were going to go hiking and they were going to do a ropes course and all of those kinds of things. And it periodically comes up at our dinner table, and it comes out more as like complaining, but I let him complain. You know, it's okay. Yeah, it's yep. That's what happens. We've had some losses, right? And it's okay, we can move forward, but it's also okay to acknowledge that some of these are bigger losses. And I think for some kids, it's been compounded because maybe they've actually had loss, like death loss too, right? And so you certainly want to give those, you want to give people the space to be able to talk about that in their time and the way that they want to talk about that. And again, I don't know that you want to dwell on it. So maybe ask a few questions and kind of and see how much they engage. And if they engaged, you know, keep the conversation going. And if they don't, then maybe let it drop. So I think it's going to be kind of, Cindy said it's very individual. It's probably going to be really dependent on how meaningful that loss was to them personally.
I've also, you know, and on the flip side of that, sometimes I wonder if I'm feeling it for him, you know, that, I mean, I am feeling like I'm missing that graduation. I have missed, you know, seeing that formal or whatever it was. And I think that is actually a really good thing. I think for all people is to, and for parents, for you, for adults working with kids, taking the pause to recognize we've lost a lot too. And being mindful of like, well, what does that feel like? You know, you're probably sad you didn't get to do some of those things that were his, but they also mean something. They also mean something to you. And I think if you can just take a pause and let that be your experience. And I like Cynthia's use of meditation, right? So meditation and one day just kind of sitting with, you know, what is something big that you have lost, and just kind of let it be. It's okay to be sad, right? Letting it be sad. It can be a little scary, but it will then help you to help them process if they need to talk about that, because you can connect with that experience and show some empathy to them. But I don't know that I would go dragging like, oh, that's like such an awful loss. Like, I'm not going to bring that up to my 7th grader at this point in time. I'm going to let him bring it up to me, and then I'm going to listen with all my might when he does start talking about it.
Okay. I had a similar question, actually. It's interesting to listen to you guys and to listen to Kathy, because, you know, in working with students, one of the things I know I have to be mindful of, and we all do, and you said it right, Cheryl, often these events, you know, we often tell kids pre-pandemic, hey, baby, graduation isn't about you. This is for your mom.
It's for me.
So we have to, like, also, I've had to be mindful. I've had to be mindful, and especially with younger kids too, that we don't impose upon them things that they're really okay about. And that's, there really is something to the psychology around, they don't know what they don't know. And I from my standpoint as a school professional, I know I've been very careful, sort of to Kathy's point, to sort of hear something, but to not sort of give it more legs than it has all on its own. Because what we view as horrific for a 3-year-old, the 3-year-old might be way, way, way more okay. Just like the baby who falls, and when a toddler is learning to walk and they fall down and they look to you and you either say, oh no, we all know that moment, and they look at your face and they were kind of okay, but they'll go, and they'll burst into tears. Or you say, oopsie daisy, right? And then the kid, and so I'm oversimplifying, but I think it's something that the adults and with our children, and with children in general, to be mindful of the line between their experience versus ours, their natural resilience and perseverance, and being careful that in our empathizing, we're not stomping on it, because they are strong little guys. And, you know, that does not at all dismiss the very real impacts, or minimize them. But I know I'm careful. One of the things, the questions though that I had, and I'd love to hear language around this from both of our panelists that came to mind. So there are some graduation parties and proms, and these things are happening. And we've all probably heard about family strife, disagreements. Haven't we heard that? You know, that families maybe have had disagreements within the family over how to handle various aspects of the pandemic. Well, they wear a mask and we don't. Well, I'm not going to grandma's if she's not going to do this. Well, so-and-so's going to be there. I'm hearing a lot of that kind of stuff buzzing, and it makes me think about kids and how we empower them with language so that they're comfortable in situations where maybe adults are following different sort of distancing rules and things than their family wants them to. And adults in our families, you know, it's sort of heartbreaking, I think, that there are rifts and divisions in families that need mending. And especially as these new events start to arise, you know, what are good ways to handle when you just don't like how that graduation party is being held, but guess what? You're going to be in big trouble if you don't show up. I think those are the very real kinds of things that are happening in the next 2 months. So I'm just curious about thoughts around that, and how to help people communicate well around things like that and still maintain their families and friends.
So, I mean, I can answer that from like, as a mom perspective, for like, and within even my neighborhood, right? There's definitely, I mean, I have 3 children and we have many children on our street, and every family has different circumstances and different reasons and different backgrounds and different people that they're seeing or not seeing, and different needs for how they're meeting the pandemic and how they're meeting that. And so one of the things that I talk openly with my children about is, if we're going to go to somebody else's house, whether we feel that we need to wear a mask or not, if that is their family's rule or request, we need to be respectful of their time and place that they have. And so we're going to follow their lead, and we may have to ask. So if you are unsure, please ask, would you like me to wear a mask? And my 9-year-old will do that. My 9-year-old knows which families on the street want them to wear masks when jumping on the trampoline, or which don't. And there's a lot of flexibility there. But I think having that conversation before you go somewhere, and saying, you know, we don't feel the need to wear a mask, but they do. And I want to be respectful of, I don't know all of their reasons. We can't understand their background, but this is how they feel comfortable re-entering the world, and we would like to see them, right? So I think from that perspective, it's just important. You don't want to be having it in front of them. And I've had many conversations where I've called parents and said, how do you want to handle this? Are you comfortable with your child coming in and using a bathroom? I'm comfortable with your child coming in and using the bathroom. Would you like them to come in and use the bathroom? Or would you prefer me to send them home, right? So it's the preloading of as much as you can, I think for kids, that sets them up for success. And practicing the conversation of, how do you send them with a mask every time and say, would you like me to wear my mask?
Right.
So that's just one thought from my perspective.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think kids it's hard for kids to manage some of these conversations to begin with, and people are taking very different approaches to what they think is safe. And that can be tough for them to know how to navigate that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think with my preteen and teenager, I've had other conversations with, would you like me to call their mom and find out how they're handling it? Or are you comfortable asking your friend how their family's handling it. So I don't assume that they want me to call their mom, because they may not. They may be mortified. Oh, mom, I can ask. Or mom, I already know. Mom, I've seen what they do. You know, you get that. But I think for my 9-year-old, it became, you know, I need to say, I'm going to call their mom, right? I'm going to find out how their family's handling this situation. So it you know, age dependent for that piece of it.
Okay. Cindy, did you want to jump in here, or?
I just, I think that, you know, I loved what you said about pre-planning, and you're, you know, if you think of long-term, you're helping your child learn to negotiate, you know, respecting somebody else's different rules. And, you know, when they do fly away and go to college, there's going to have to be a lot of negotiation with their first roommate, with how they're going to use a public bathroom or whatever. And all the skills that they learned back in COVID are going to serve them well in life for how to navigate a difficult time. And, you know, I'm the old bird in the crowd tonight. So I'm 67. And, you know, my parents had, and your grandparents, you know, they went through the Depression. They went through a world war. My mother was Rosie the Riveter in the airplane factory because all the men were over there. And, you know, just try to put it in perspective that, yes, we've had a really tough year, but, you know, so did our parents and our grandparents and the generation before. And you know, how we teach our children to, and our families, to deal with crisis, to, you know, circle and make a plan together and support each other being successful in that plan. And, you know, and we, you know, give positive feedback when your 9-year-old wears the mask respectfully in his best friend's home, when maybe in his own home he doesn't have to wear the mask. You know, there's so many great lessons and building of resilience. You know, your kid, like, really, you know, as much as you can. And, you know, my kids are in their 20s, but teaching them that they are competent and they are capable and they are resilient, you know, and helping them see that side of themselves, even when some days are really rough for all of us.
Okay. I'm our Community and Social Services Director, who's our staff liaison, Kristen Formanek, who is not here tonight, did prepare some remarks. So I'm going to ask Tom Steen to just read her remarks, and then we can all comment or forward questions after he's finished, if that's okay with all of you. Go ahead, Tom. Thank you for doing this.
Great, no problem. I'm not much of a reader, but I read through her stuff and it's really, really good. And I want to support a lot of the conversation that's happened today, because Kristen has also made many of the same suggestions, which I think is really powerful. You know, in the first point, and I think all the speakers have shared that today, is, you know, we've been through something big time. And so, you know, finding our way through to the other side is so critical. You know, Kristen says reentry, and I agree with you. It's a reentry, but it's really flow back into, which I think is so very important as we push the pandemic behind us and we move forward. She talks about self-reflection, which I think is also pretty powerful. You know, it's looking in the mirror and really talking to yourself on how you're dealing with it. What are the best things that you can do, whether it's self-care. We heard, I got new places to walk now. I learned today that there's new places to walk. I'm going to do that because that's part of my self-care. So really important. Self-reflection, self-care, you know, reaching out to help folks that, you know, I recently moved and live in more of a senior area. I'm getting to know my neighbors now because we all have vaccines. So to just make sure everybody is okay, not only for ourselves and for others. And then she also says, go easy on yourself. I think there's a lot, and some of the panelists talked about that. You know, this is hard stuff. Talking to your children about it, keeping those lines of communication open, respecting rules and other people's limits. I think are all a part of how we're going to get to the other side of this thing. She also talks about self-advocacy, and I like this because she's like, do you get the shot or don't you? Man, I was online as soon as, because I'm in the 65 age group, as soon as I could get it, boy, I was right there pushing the button so that I could get my vaccine. My wife's in the medical field, so she had gotten hers already. So, you know, educate yourself, understand how important it is to get vaccinated. You know, as a kid, you know, born in the 50s and early 60s, going to school, I had to have all those vaccines. We all had all those vaccines. Well, you know, it's unfortunate, but now COVID vaccine is going to be with us for many years. I'm sure there's going to be booster shots and things like that. So, you know, find your way, educate yourself to understand if you haven't gotten the shot because you have hesitancy, to please educate yourself and know that it's really very important. You know, and seek help. I think that's, you know, our social services department has all kinds of resources, but, you know, sometimes you hit a roadblock and you just need a third party to talk to about some of the struggles and the things that you're dealing with. So I really strongly suggest, and there's a lot of great practitioners here in the Simsbury or in the Valley, anyway, that you can reach out to and you know, and know that those folks are there to help, so that you have somebody else to talk to, you know, other than your family or your friends, and certainly resources. And I think our social services department can really help in that regard, because there's a lot of things happening out there. There's a lot of funding now flowing into our state to help with utility bills and rent and mortgage and food, you know, food stamps. So you know, if your family is in that place, and you don't be afraid to ask for help. We have a great social services department here who can help you, and it's all confidential to help you lead through the and then, you know, just a couple more that Kristen has suggested. We've already helped your children, I also salute our school system because they've been very progressive in getting back to a regular learning as opposed to this other kind of learning, because we know it's not as effective. It's most effective is in-person learning. And some of the suggestions tonight I think were very, very powerful. And stay connected to your school and to your social worker, your school psychologist. If you see things in your young people that you're, even if they're in the virtual learning thing, and you reach out to them. They're great pros, and they can really, really help you to understand what's going on, provide support, and certainly refer on if more assistance is needed. And lastly, set goals, and you know, and I think that makes a lot of. I set a goal for myself tonight. I want to check out all these new walking places because I'm at that age. I got to start walking. So and so that's like a goal, right? Set some goals for you. You know, there's really nothing. There is nothing that in the human psyche about social distancing. I actually hate that phrase. We had the physical distance because of the COVID, but we're social beings. Stay connected. Set some goals that you're comfortable with, so that you know that now you're taking care of yourself. And small steps. I call it crawl before you walk, before you run. So very important. And lastly, the Social Services Department is offering a presentation and conversation about coping and uncertainty. The presentation for adults will be on Tuesday, May 25th from 7 to 8:30, and the presentation for the youth in the next the next day, May 26th, from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. I'm assuming it's probably at Enel Hall or maybe one of the schools. But if you have any questions and you'd like to participate in that program, I certainly would want to, if I had kids still in school, but call them 860-658-3283 to register and receive the Zoom link and certainly ask questions. So on behalf of Kristen, that's her presentation.
I would also encourage you to check the Community and Social Services Facebook page and their website. There's a lot of information there about programs that are available. And a lot of people don't even realize that we do those things, but I always encourage people to try the websites first, because we do try to put information there for everybody. I have one last comment, which I hear from people in my family. When planning family events, we have a family reunion coming up this summer that we're having in person. And one family member said, I can't go until it's over. And I've heard that from more than one person. Well, I'm not going to do that until it's over. And this idea that somehow it's over, I'm not sure when that happens. And like Becky said before, do you push back on that, and say, it isn't going to be over. We're going to learn to, protect ourselves, right, by getting vaccinated and wearing our masks, and do what we can. But is it going to be over?
I think the thinking at this point is, there are at least several years in front of us, and it's going to be different than what the last year was, but we are going to have mutations. We're already having them. Mm-hmm. And we have to live into whether our vaccines are going to cover all of those or not. And then, so it's more, we're not going to get to an end point and no more COVID on the face of the earth. But so I would encourage people to start now, that it is safe now, and mm-hmm. they wouldn't be opening up this state on May 19th if it wasn't, and take baby steps. But I would encourage people to do that. But if they say they're not, then you do have to ultimately respect that. And say, we'll keep inviting you, and we hope one of these days you come. And also, we're going to have some of the food outside. I tried to really accommodate people who just can't come in at all. And, so if it's nice weather, we're going to have as much of it outside as possible. Mm-hmm. And, we'll have chairs far apart. So there'll be lots of ways you can interact with each other without being more than 6 feet, so that kind of thing I would recommend.
Thank you.
Cheryl?
Yes, Sally.
Could Chris comment for us maybe on what it was like being a police officer, what was really scary about COVID as a police officer, and how that changed their practices and how they're adjusting now that the situation's improved?
Take it away, Deputy Chief Davis.
Thank you. Obviously, the pandemic changed a lot of how the police responded and interacted with the public during since the COVID started. Initially, I think there was a lot less of I'll say proactive patrolling. The officers really tried to limit the exposure and contact that they had with the public. We switched over to started handling calls that could be taken via phone, maybe like late reported incidents that didn't necessarily need the officer to physically be there per se, to have contact with the complaints over a phone instead of face-to-face contact. As but also, I mean, obviously there was some concern because, there's some calls that, as much as you try and take precautions on whether you're wearing a mask or, taking different precautions, things happen. And whether it be, unfortunately, if they have to get in a physical, restraint or something with an individual, masks could come off. They might not have the opportunity to put on proper protective gear prior to an incident. So there's a lot of things that were going on back then. As time has gone on, and obviously as officers got vaccinated, a lot of those, I'll say fears or things have kind of subsided. And we're kind of starting to really get back to a little bit more, I'll say normalcy, as much as can be given the circumstances. But it's kind of taken its toll. I mean, in that, when you don't have that, when you're limiting your contact with the public, that's also, those positive interactions that we have with the public. And, that's really, what community policing is all about is, getting to know the public and those interactions that are not, call driven. It's the, talking to somebody, while they're out getting an ice cream or whatever, whatever it is. I've only been in town for 6 months and I've been really trying to get out and, I want to learn, and get to know the community. And it's been a challenge for me personally, in that regard. I mean, to try and, start to build those connections in the town. And when you have this isn't necessarily just, exclusive to policing, but, when everybody's wearing masks, you lose that physical, contact and be able to see, like, how is somebody reacting? Are they smiling? Are they not? What's their what's their facial features? I mean, I go to the grocery store and you only see somebody from the eyes up, and I think I know that person. Do I know that person? Do I not know that person? I mean, so it's hard. It's interesting. I mean, but it's from a connection standpoint and trying to build those community, relations. It's definitely been a challenge. There's no doubt about that. And we're certainly looking forward to, the days when, the masks come off and we can, get out and really interact with the public and forge those strong connections.
Thank you, Chris.
Are there any other questions? Okay. I'd really like to thank our panelists for joining us tonight. This has been a great conversation. And I very much appreciate your insights and suggestions for how we all can deal a little better with how we move forward in this situation. And I very much appreciate that. Would anybody else like to say anything?
I want to ask, is there a place where I just had a couple of resources for parents. Like there's a really, Lynn Lyons is somebody great that we've worked with, and she has a really great website and some books and a couple of other resources. Is there somewhere where I can send? That would be Google
tremendous. Docs? If you send, I think if you send them to Becky or whoever you were, or Amy, I'm sure she would get them to us. We do keep resources and we will put them on the Community for Care page on the town website. So that would be terrific. We would love that.
Great.
I think, or Dana could also help you with that.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. You can reach out to me by email. I'd like to say one thing.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Thomas Dean, for stepping up and being Kristen tonight with her presentation. You are a clutch player. She is really sorry she could not be here. It was unavoidable, but that was seriously, thank you. Thank you.
I don't know how to say no.
Thanks, Tom. You did a much better job than I would have done just reading. You added your special personality.
Thank you.
May I say that, just to say that I think the Senior Center has done a really excellent job during this time period, that they've offered a wide variety of Zoom exercise and meditation and activities that you can do, and just a chat, and you can pick up the Wednesday lunch outside. And it's been I think it's been a big community resource. So I just thought they've done a really good job, and it's just
I totally agree. I know Kathy Marshall isn't on the call anymore, but she has done a tremendous job.
She and Karen